Pokemon Sword and Shield are surprisingly some of the most fun games to Nuzlocke in my opinion, so today I'm gonna find out if I can beat a Pokemon Shield Hardcore Nuzlocke using only rock types. And these are the rock types available to me, and Tyranitar is honestly the whole reason I chose to play Shield. Additionally, we can get Lycanroc in the Isle of Armor and quite a few encounters if we choose to go to the Crown Tundra later on. And as always, the rules I'll be following are firstly the standard Nuzlocke rules where any fainted Pokemon must be permanently boxed and I can only catch the first rock type in every area. As for the hardcore editions, I must play on set mode at all times, no items can be used in battle except for held items, and I'm not allowed to overlevel the next gym leader's highest level Pokemon. But as for rock types themselves, they do have tons of weaknesses, but a lot of great moves. So let's try and do this. Bring it on, Galar region.
The Galar region, home to the wondrous creatures we all know as Pokemon. And also the only region where the main protagonist looks like a proper bellend. The Pokemon inhabiting this region are diverse and intelligent creatures.
Why, thank you very much for that introduction, David, but for now we need to pick a starter Pokemon, and since none of them evolve into rock types, I just picked Grookey because it's the most base choice. I then acquire some epic hipster drip before moving on to the wild area where we can find our first encounters. The first of which is a Dwebble that I find at West Lake Axwell. I capture it and name it Rolling Stone since Rolling Stones wouldn't fit, and it ends up having a neutral nature, which is pretty good for us. Next up, I look in a random raid den and find myself a Roggenrola, which I capture and name Gravy Train. It has an impish nature, which is amazing, but the weak armor ability really makes it terrible. And in the wild area, we can of course find the amazing Leftovers item. After that, we take a detour to the wondrous Isle of Armor, where we can find ourselves the Expert Belt. But not only that, we can find ourselves a Dreadnought at level 20, which I catch and name after one of my favorites, Oasis. It too ends up having a neutral nature, which is pretty awesome, and we can move on to Challenge Road, where we can find a wild Rockruff at level 15. I captured and name it Queen, and it ends up having an attack boosting nature, which is amazing. But now that we've got some Pokemon, we can progress further in the story and get to Motostoke, where I can get a new hipster outfit. But before we can progress to the Galar Mines, we have to fight our rival Hop. And you know how I said rock types get some great moves? Well, a lot of them get some awesome setup moves, and in this case we can actually get Swords Dance through TR in the wild area. This means we can set up against Wooloo, whose tackle we resist, take it out with a Play Rough, but then we have to go up against Sobble. And Water Gun does tons of damage, after which we don't quite take it out with a Play Rough. But knowing that the AI is stupid and he's definitely going to go for a potion here, I decided to just go for Rock Throw, and we end up taking out Sobble. If the AI were just smarter here, he would have totally won and beat our Rockruff. Anyway, last up is Brookity, which is a flying type, so we obviously just bop it with a Rock Throw, and that's it for Hop, who's surprised that we know about super effective moves for some reason. Then on our way to the mines, we can get our next encounter, which is a Roly-Coly that I capture and name Motorhead. It's got an absolute garbage plus special attack minus special defense nature, but next we have to go up against Trainer Bead. And the last time I played through Sword and Shield, which was during my Dark type challenge, it wasn't exactly difficult to beat Bead since all he has is Psychic types, but this time, since I have a Bug type, he gets absolutely destroyed once again. Sorry about that, Bead. Actually, you know what? I should never apologize for beating this dummy. Anyway, I decide to level everybody up to the level cap, and in doing so, Motorhead evolves into Carkol. And now that everybody's leveled up, it's finally time to take on our first gym challenge against Milo and his grass types. And my strategy is very simple. Since Rolling Stone is both rock and bug, grass is neutral effective against it, so we can set up both a Swords Dance and a substitute. I'm then completely safe to take out Gossifleur with a single X-Scissor, and now all we have to face is Eldegoss. And one of the biggest problems with a Nuzlocke and Sword and Shield is that Dynamax Pokemon do way too much damage, which is why I want a substitute, and I can go for Protect to minimize that damage. And this means that even though I get hit by a super powerful Max Overgrowth, I can actually withstand it without even breaking my sub. And since I'm slower, the next turn I can just go for Substitute, so that when Max Overgrowth actually takes out my sub, I can just bring it back up again, because you don't actually take any damage through Substitute. And at that point, we've exhausted all of Eldegoss's Dynamax turns, we still have a sub up, so it can take out our sub with a Magical Leaf, and we can take it out with an X-Scissor. And with that done, we beat Milo and get our very first gym badge in the Galar region without even losing a Pokemon. And after the fight, we move on to Hulberry, which happens to be one of my favorite looking cities in all of Pokemon for some reason. And we pretty much have to go up against Nessa, our next gym challenge, right off the bat. And since water is super effective against rock, I lead off with Oasis, who has a neutral matchup, so that I can set up rock polishes and iron defenses against Goldeen. It keeps hitting me with Water Pulse, but I gave Oasis a Person Berry in case I get confused, but I actually just never end up getting confused by Water Pulse. After a while, I think the AI tries to match all of our stat changes by raising Goldeen's speed by using agility, but it's kind of futile in the end, because at this point we've got +6 defense and +2 speed, which means we outspeed everything on Ness's team. Even her own Dreadnought doesn't stand a chance against a fully powered up, super effective body press. Not exactly the most difficult fight for us there, but it would have been a lot harder if we didn't have a part water type like Dreadnought. Anyway, we then have to go see the chairman, and oh my goodness, Chairman Rose, have you lost your marbles, or are you just out patrolling your knickers? Either way, we move on to the second Galar mine, where I find myself a Binacle that I catch and name Sting. It has a timid nature, which at least boosts speed, but that minus attack really isn't ideal. We then do a bit of backtracking to the wild area, where I find myself a Shuckle that I capture and name Led Zeppelin. Then at the bridge fields, we find a Rhyhorn that I name Def Leopard. It does have a garbage nature, but at least it's a really good Pokemon. Then before we can progress to the third gym, we have to go up against Trainer Bead once again. And well, let's just say that Bead really doesn't have a good track record on this channel. He unsurprisingly gets absolutely destroyed. Don't take it too personally, buddy. You're just a horrible person. Anyway, we do have to take on Team Yell together with Hop, and after the battle, Gravy Train actually ends up evolving into Boldore. Then as we're heading out to the mine to get back to Motostoke, we end up running into my next encounter, a Sudowoodo, which I capture and name Dire Straits. It ends up having the sturdy ability, which might come in handy. That's foreshadowing. Then the next real life day, I managed to level up Rockruff to level 25, which means it evolves into Lycanroc, and I choose midday form since all my other Pokemon are pretty slow, and this thing has a base speed of 115. And it's time to put our newly acquired Lycanroc to the test right away against Kabu. And Kabu starts out with Ninetales, and I lead with Queen and go for Substitute right away because I know it likes to use Will-O-Wisp. This basically gives me a free opportunity to set up a Swords Dance as Ninetales goes for an Ember, which doesn't even break my sub, so the next turn I can just set up once again. And even though Lycanroc's defenses aren't that great, another Ember doesn't even break our sub, which means it does less than 1/8 of damage. After our third Swords Dance though, a third Ember does the trick and actually breaks our sub, which means that I set up another the next turn so that I can start going for the sweep safely. And the only reason I want to set up another substitute here is because Rock Tomb is only 95% accuracy, so I don't want to risk that 5% screwing me over, but other than that, it's pretty much a clean one-hit KO on all of Kabu's Pokemon. An easy Kabu fight for once. And honestly, that's quite a relief, because most of the time, Kabu is the sticking point for people doing Nuzlockes of Sword and Shield. Level 27 and all of his fully evolved fire types are pretty scary most of the time. So I will certainly take an easy win against this guy any day I can get it. And since we now have the first 3 gym badges, we can finally move on through the wild area and get to Hammerlock. And as soon as we arrive, we can fight a pretty interesting trainer, Mr. Focus, who only has a Cottony. And this particular Cottony does have a Focus Sash and Endeavor, so it does take you down to 1 HP, but since it doesn't have Quick Attack or any priority move, it doesn't really matter, I guess, but we do get the Focus Sash item. And then on my way to Stow-on-Side, something really scary happens, and we run into an Arena Trap Doug trio with Queen. This means that we're not allowed to run or switch Pokemon, so we have to eat a super effective Bulldoze, and if it uses a second one, Queen is out of the game. Fortunately though, it goes for Slash, which we do survive, but just barely, and that was a close call. And then on my way to Stow-on-Side, I run into this guy who's probably the craziest looking person I've ever seen in my life. And this is a part of the game where you usually have to do a bit of grinding to get to the level cap, and while doing so, my Carkol evolves into a Colossal. But not only that, Rolling Stone evolves into Crustle, and with that, we're ready to take on Alistar in the next gym challenge. Now, Alistar has Ghost types, which means my best option here is to use Oasis to its fullest potential and utilize its Strong Jaw ability. And I'm in kind of the same situation here as with the previous gym, where I'm faster than Alistar's first Pokemon, I can set up a substitute, and it can't break my sub with a single move. So this means I can juggle substitute and setup moves until I'm basically as set up as I need to be, and I go for 3 full Swords Dances before trying to take out this Yamask. I then go ahead and set up a second Rock Polish just so that I know that I'm going to be faster than Gengar in the back, because Oasis just isn't that fast of a Pokemon. After that, Yamask goes down to a single crunch, same with Cursula, and Mimikyu puts up a little bit more of a fight with its Disguise ability, but ultimately since I'm behind a sub, I'm very safe. And since we don't have to deal with Mimikyu's Disguise ability anymore, we can take it out with a single Strong Jaw boosted +6 crunch, and the same goes for Dynamax Gengar. Kaboom! I didn't exactly expect this gym fight to be any difficult at all, but I'm pretty afraid of the late game ones. Also, can anybody tell me if Alistar's an actual Shy Guy reference from Super Mario? Anyway, the story moves on, and Bead wants to tear down this mural, which looks like something I would have painted when I was 5. I say go ahead with the demolition. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever agreed with Bead on anything. And you know how I said Hulberry was one of my favorite cities in Pokemon? Well, Balanlia has to be my all-time favorite. Once here, we can pick up the Eviolite, which is going to come in handy. And Ball Guy also gives us the Love Ball. Ball Guy, aren't you just the quintessential ball of love yourself? Anyway, it's time for our next gym challenge against Lady Opal and her fairy types. And I go for a Swords Dance right away to set up to +2 attack as I get hit by a fairy wind for not that much damage. Opal then asks what her nickname is, and since we know her nickname's the Wizard, our speed gets doubled as well in this first turn. We continue setting up, and the thing about Opal is since she gives you so many boosts, as long as you're not weak to fairy, it's a pretty easy fight. After taking out Weezing, Mawile is next, and with its Intimidate, it cuts our attack down to just +1, so I go for Protect just to stall out a turn for the next question, and Opal's favorite color is actually purple, oddly enough, even though she's so obsessed with pink. This doubles both of our defenses, and I go for a Drill Run, which I actually miss, and Mawile starts setting up its defense, and after getting hit by a Crunch, third time's the charm, and we take out the Mawile with a Drill Run. This means we have to go up against Togekiss, and I decide to go for Protect just to bait out the next question, and we obviously answer that Opal is 16 years old, youthful as she looks. And since that's the answer that Opal wanted, we get our attack and special attack boosted by 2 stages, so an Iron Head is an easy knockout on Togekiss. And Alchemy falls all the same since her stats are so massively inflated, and I can't be the only one who thinks that Opal looks like Maggie Smith's character in Downton Abbey. I also think I'm the only guy in his 20s who's actually watched Downton Abbey, but that's a completely different matter. After the fight, Opal joins us in Hammerlock, where Bead gets recruited for the gym mission once again just for being pink. After that, we start moving towards Sirchester, and we have to fight once again against Hop, but this time it's different. This time it's the first time he has Inteleon. So I start out by outspeeding and taking out Trevenant with a super effective Strong Jaw boosted Crunch. Then next up, Hop sends in Bolton, so I pivot out into Eviolite Rhyhorn. We're obviously immune to Spark, and the next turn I think he goes for a negative priority move because we outspeed with Earthquake, take it out in one hit, and then we have to go up against Inteleon. So I switch back into Oasis, who can hopefully take a Snipe Shot fairly well, and even though it's neutral, it does almost half damage. And since it takes us 2 crunches to be able to take out Inteleon, but it's faster and gets to go twice again before we can move, we're not going to be able to take it out with Oasis. So at this point, I have to make the difficult decision to sacrifice Gravy Train so that we can actually win this fight. It seemed like the obvious choice since we don't have Sturdy, and it's not going to be able to evolve into Sandstream Gigalith anyway since we're not allowed to trade. But now that we have a safe switch, we can swap in Queen and outspeed with a Thunderfang. Then comes Hop's next Pokemon, a Snorlax, so I swap out into Motorhead so that we can tank a Heavy Slam and retaliate by burning it so that it doesn't do any damage to us whatsoever. It can, however, paralyze us, which is a bit annoying because we might not hit our moves, and it's at this point we start a battle of the heavy boys. But eventually, the colossal weight of Motorhead is way too much for this Snorlax to handle, and we come out on top. This means that Hop's last Pokemon is Heatmore, which really isn't a threat to our Colossal at all, who quad resists it, and we can just take it out with a Stone Edge. The big problem with this fight is that we couldn't set up since he leads with Trevenant that's super effective against rock types, but I guess all's well that ends well. After that, on the way to Sirchester, Sting evolves into Barbaracle. And to be honest, Sirchester is another beautiful city. They did a great job designing these towns in this game. Oh, and I have to say, I think this is my best fit yet. But a few gym trainers later, Def Leppard evolves into a Rhydon that can still utilize that Eviolite. But now comes one of the trickier fights against Melanie because of her Lapras that's super effective against us, so I lead off with Led Zeppelin as she leads with Frostmoth that goes for Hail, which I Encore it into. And Encore is a pretty overpowered move because we can just switch into Colossal knowing that she's gonna go for Hail every single time and take it out with a Heat Crash. And honestly, I've always overlooked Shuckle, but the utility it can provide to a team is actually really useful. I then know that Darmanitan likes to go for Taunt, so I decide to go for a Stone Edge, which just barely doesn't take it out. It does, however, activate Darmanitan's Zen mode, and I don't think I've ever seen this snowman thing, but it goes for Icicle Crash, and the next turn I could just take it out. Melanie's second to last Pokemon is a penguin with its head stuck in an ice cube, and it sets up the Hail once again, so I decide to go for a Body Press just to break its Ice Face ability, and oh boy does this thing look sad. But since Melanie's next Pokemon is gonna be G-Max Lapras, we definitely want something kind of set up so that we can work on taking it out in a single hit, so I swap out into Shuckle as it goes for Amnesia. Then I decide to Encore it into whatever move it uses so that it can't use Hail once again to get its Ice Face ability back. I then use Power Split to average our attack stats to make it really weak, but it actually freezes me with a Freeze Dry, so I have to switch out of my Shuckle. So I go into Queen, my fastest Pokemon, and I decide to just take out Ice Cube with a single Iron Head because I have a strategy in mind that can actually beat this Lapras. You see, whenever you go for Protect, Dynamax moves actually go through it and do a little bit of damage, but if you go for Substitute, on the other hand, you just take the 25%, and the G-Max move doesn't do any more damage than that. So all of these incredibly scary Max Geysers that would probably take out anything on my team in a single hit, except for maybe Oasis that could take 2, are practically just doing 25% damage every single turn, and we can stall it out of its 3 Dynamax turns until it's just a regular Lapras. This does, however, mean that Queen is only at 11 HP at the end of this, so we definitely have to swap out, and the only thing that can take a Surf from this Lapras is gonna be either Sting or Oasis, so I start by going into Sting, but I get my speed lowered by an Icy Wind, so I figure that I'll just swap out into Oasis to see if I can do some damage with Crunch. I am lucky and dodge a Sting, and a Crunch does about 1/3 damage. This means I have to take a Surf, which does about 40%, and the next turn I can hit it with my next Crunch, which does quite a bit of damage, and then I get my speed lowered with Icy Wind. Fortunately, I prepared for a scenario like this by giving a Citrus Berry to Oasis so I can tank a Surf after I'm slower from that Icy Wind and take it out with a Crunch. It turns out that Lapras wasn't quite as big an issue as I thought it was going to be, because Lapras can definitely be an annoying Pokemon to deal with, but that's 5 badges down. After the fight, we can help out this doctor who gives us the Rotom Bike that can ride on water. This means that we now get access to the Lake of Outrage, where we can find probably my favorite rock type of all time, Larvitar. I capture it and name it the Beetles, and it turns out that it has a neutral nature, which works out really well. It is, however, level 50, so we're not going to be able to use it until after we beat Raihan, so for now we head towards Spikemuth. And it turns out Marnie can help us into Spikemuth, but we have to beat her in a battle first, so I start out with Rolling Stone as she sends in her own Liepard. And the only attacking move this Liepard has is Snarl, and it sets up a nasty plot as I go for a substitute to be safer. I then get hit by a Torment, which means I can't use the same move twice in a row for the rest of the battle, but I set up a Rock Polish, so I set up an Iron Defense the turn in between, then I go for another Rock Polish just to outspeed this Liepard so that I can take it out with one Body Press. Body Press is honestly one of the most overpowered strategies introduced in all of Sword and Shield, and it's very fun to use, but I don't think I'll use it in future challenges because it's just so good. I mean, the Torment was kind of annoying, made it so I had to switch moves every other turn, but eventually we take out Marnie, and it's time to go up against her big brother Piers in our 7th gym fight. And since we have the winning strategy here, I don't even have to change the order of my team. I can just send in Rolling Stone as Scrafty intimidates us, but since Body Press works off defense anyway, it doesn't matter at all. So after using Rock Polish and setting up a substitute, I can pretty much freely just set up Iron Defenses against this thing to make it do less and less damage every single turn, not even breaking my sub. And the rest of the battle is pretty much a Body Press massacre. I'm like a steamroller out here, flattening everything I see. And with that, we claim our 7th gym badge from Piers. This man got rocked and rolled. The game then does this super annoying thing where it tells us that Leon is doing a bunch of cool stuff but doesn't show it to us, which is super lame. But at this point, it's time for us to take on our final gym challenge against Raihan and his very scary sand team. But I think I have a pretty cool strategy involving Crustle and Shuckle, who can tank a Breaking Swipe the first turn, getting their attack lowered, which isn't gonna matter. I then go ahead and set up a substitute with Crustle, which doesn't get broken by Gigalith's Body Press, and I can then Power Split the Flygon so it won't do as much damage. I then go ahead and start setting up an Iron Defense on Rolling Stone as Led Zeppelin gets hit by another Body Press, but it doesn't do a lot of damage since Led Zeppelin is a tank. Flygon then misses a Steel Wing. I go for another substitute, which doesn't break to a Body Press, and I can hit Flygon with a fairly powerful Gyro Ball. The Gyro Ball is going to be a 4-hit KO, which is actually going to be pretty useful in this case. The next turn, I get hit by another Breaking Swipe, which doesn't lower my attack through the sub, which doesn't matter once again. I can set up another Iron Defense and take a Body Press with my Shuckle. I then hit Flygon with another Gyro Ball, and it goes for Steel Wing against my substitute, which doesn't even break it after all those Iron Defenses, of which I set up another. Then I have to tank yet another Body Press with my Shuckle, who's really being a good sport about taking all these hits, who goes for a Gyro Ball on Flygon, once again leaving it in the red. Now that I'm at +6 defense, not even another Steel Wing from Flygon breaks my substitute, so I can go for a Rock Polish so I'll be faster than Duraludon when it comes out. Gigalith actually manages to break my sub, and I then go for an Encore to lock Flygon into Steel Wing. I then take a minuscule damage from the next Steel Wing, which actually gets the defense boost on Flygon, and I set up another substitute. Then after hitting Gigalith with a Gyro Ball at the end of the turn, I take it out the next turn with a Body Press. And after the Gigalith goes down, Flygon hits me with a Steel Wing, which takes me down into the red, and a Gyro Ball doesn't actually end up taking it out. It must be left at like 1 HP. The following turn, I immediately take out Sandaconda with a Body Press so that we don't have to deal with any glares. But because of Sandaconda's Sand Pit ability, the Sandstorm does come back, which doesn't really matter since all our team members are rock types anyway and don't take damage. We do end up living the next Steel Wing on 3 HP and take out Flygon with a Rock Slide. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is what the whole setup has been for. We have 2 Rock Polishes and 3 Iron Defenses set up so we can take out this Duraludon in a single Body Press. We end up even getting a crit, which doesn't matter at all, but I was really scared for this fight since they have a lot of moves that are super effective against rock types, and this defensive strategy was the only thing I could think of that wouldn't lose us Pokemon. So that's the final badge in hand. When I do business, I'm called a businessman. So when I battle, should I be called a battle man? Actually, when you say something like that, I think you're just dumb, man. Anyway, at this point, we're moving on to the big city, and we managed to get to a level with Larvitar, so it evolves into Pupitar. We then finally arrive in Winden, where we're gonna take on the Pokemon League Cup. What a truly handsome chap. What exactly is going on in this house?
A Pokeball monster!
How dare you call someone as pure as Ball Guy a monster? Anyway, it's finally time for the Pokemon League Cup, and first off is Marnie, and after some setting up, let's just say that we kind of turn her team into a pancake. The only Pokemon she has that manages to actually survive a +6 defense body press is her G-Max Grimmsnarl. But since we're faster than Grimmsnarl because of Rock Polish, we can just set up another substitute the next turn, then set up yet another sub, not get taken out by a G-Max Snooze, and then take out Grimmsnarl when it turns into a regular Pokemon. Yeah, Marnie pretty much got absolutely destroyed once again, but it's the first fight in the Elite Four, and as you can tell, I decided to put the level cap at 53, and I went in at level 51 just because I knew these first few fights weren't going to be that difficult. Speaking of which, our next challenger is Hop, who starts out with Double, so I go into Shuckle, and I get flinched the very first turn because of a Zen Headbutt. He then goes for a Cotton Guard, so I can Encore him into that. This, of course, means that the next turn he's going to get to +6 defense and not going to be able to use it anymore, so I go for a Power Split just to effectively have his attack. Since he's locked into Cotton Guard, I can safely switch out into Oasis and start setting up Swords Dances and Rock Polishes against this thing. And I make sure to set up my attack all the way to +6 and my speed to +4 to outspeed everything on his team. However, since he's set up with Cotton Guard all the way to +6, it actually takes 2 liquidations to take down Double, but after that, there's nothing that can stand up to Oasis. Hop, you certainly would have needed more of a Wonder Wall to be able to get through this one. This time, your Inteleon didn't give me any trouble. You are and always will remain Leon Minus. Anyway, we then have to chase down this Macrocosmos guy who's trying to go to the Ministry of Magic, also that we can go up against the crazy businesswoman Oleana. She leads out with Frostlass, so I decide to use Led Zeppelin, and after it goes for Will-O-Wisp, I hit it with an Encore so that it keeps going for Will-O-Wisp. This gives me the opportunity to go for Power Split to pretty much have its attack. I then decide to go for Sticky Web just so that I'm going to be able to outspeed anything on Oleana's team, but the problem here is really that I don't want Queen to get hit by a Will-O-Wisp as soon as I switch out, so I stall out the Encore turns by using Protect and then switch in Queen as Frostlass goes for a double team. This means that I can come in and safely go for a Swords Dance as Frostlass goes for a Will-O-Wisp, which gets healed by my Rostberry. At this point, everything is set up the way it should be, and we just have to hope and pray that I hit a Fire Fang, which I do end up doing, and we can take out the Frostlass. Next up is my Lodic, which does end up getting a +2 in special attack because of its competitive ability since Sticky Web is out, but one Thunder Fang later and it's out of the game and it's on to Serena. It obviously goes down to a Fire Fang, and then we have to deal with Salazzle, and this is why we set up the Sticky Web since it's faster than Queen. So I take the opportunity to set up another Swords Dance just to get as much attack as possible, and Dragon Pulse actually does way less than I expected it to. Then we can finally use my 4th move slot, Zen Headbutt, to take out Salazzle, which is actually going to be really fitting for the next Pokemon, Garbodor. And can I just come out and say that I really love the design of G-Max Garbodor? I don't know, I guess I just have a soft spot in my heart for this little guy that everybody seems to hate on. But regardless of how much I like it, it goes down to a single Zen Headbutt, and that's it for Oleana, who really needs to chill out more than anything else. After that, Rose gives Leon a speech that's suspiciously villainous. But it's then time for our next battle in the Champions Cup against Challenger Bead. And he switched it up to Fairy types, and he starts with Mawile, goes for an Iron Head, but doesn't get the flinch, and gets his attack lowered by a Power Split. The next turn, however, he actually does get the flinch, but after lefties, I survive another on 7 HP, but I get the flinch again! So at this point, it's time to swap out into Motorhead, who can tank hits from this Mawile all day, and I decide to go for a Will-O-Wisp, but the second turn, Mawile actually gets burned by Flame Body before I can use it. So now we're pretty well equipped to swap out into someone else and do some setting up, and who better than Def Leppard? Because of the Power Split, the burn, and the fact that I'm holding Eviolite, it can't touch me at all. So I go ahead and set up 2 Swords Dances, after which I hit this Mawile with a powerful Earthquake that takes it out. Now the thing is, Def Leppard isn't exactly the bulkiest Pokemon, so I'm not sure about this strategy at this point, but Gardevoir comes out next, and it actually just goes for Wish, so a single Smart Strike does the trick. Next up is Rapidash, and I did the calcs, and it can't even take us out with a crit Dazzling Gleam, so we're free to take this one out with a Smart Strike as well. And then we got Bead's final Pokemon, Hatterene, which is so slow it's not even funny. We just outspeed and take it out in a single hit. Def Leppard wasn't exactly pouring sugar on you, Bead. It was more like humiliating defeat. But this actually means that we once again have to take on the water trainer Nessa. And she leads off with her Golisopod, and I do what I do best and send in Led Zeppelin. And after tanking a liquidation, unfortunately getting a defense drop and eating my citrus berry, I go for a power split to lower this thing's attack, which means I'm actually going to be able to take another liquidation. So after setting up Sticky Web, I switch into our savior Oasis. This means that I can tank a liquidation really well, and as I go for Sword Stance the next turn, I accidentally start kind of a Cold War here since Golisopod tries to match my boosts. So we go on for 2 turns, and Golisopod with +4 attack is honestly a super scary thing to think about, so the next turn, instead of setting up, I go for a crunch and take it out. Next is Baroscuda, which is really fast, so even after the Sticky Web drop, it outspeeds us, hits us with Drill Run, but we take it out with a crunch. Seeking is pretty weak, so I go for another Sword Stance as it sets up an Aqua Ring. The next turn, I take it out with a +6 Strong Jaw boosted crunch, and same goes for Pelipper. Then we only have Dreadnought left, which I outspeed because of Sticky Web and can take it out with a single Earthquake. I guess Nessa really wasn't that scary, even though she has a team full of water types against my rock types. However, after the battle, since my level cap is now 55 because of Raihan, I decide to level up my Pupitar with a rare candy to 55 to get it to evolve into Tyranitar. And now that we've got this thing, it's time to ravage Alistar's team, because we have a dark type and his ghost types ain't gonna stand a chance against this dragon dancing monster. And oh boy, this just goes to show why Tyranitar is one of my favorite Pokemon and why it was the most used in the Gen 4 metagame. I mean, the way I'm so effortlessly tearing through Alistar's team with this thing, I almost feel bad for him. Almost being the keyword. Yeah, he seriously had no shot. He wasn't even close to doing good damage to Tyranitar at all. The most damage I did was to myself with Substitute. Anyway, next is Miss Galar himself, social media man Raihan. So we're gonna see if we can steal the title from this guy. He starts out with Torkoal, so I use Protect just to stall out one of the Sun turns. Then he goes for a Yawn, which is totally fine since I have Chesto Berry, and I set up my Sticky Web. Then I go for another Protect to stall another turn of Sun as he goes for Yawn again, oddly, and I go to sleep and heal with my Chesto Berry. The Torkoal then decides to use the Sun by going for Solar Beam, and I decide to diminish his damage even more by going for a Power Split. The next turn after that happens to be the final turn of Sun, so I go for Protect just to stall it out so we don't have to deal with any Solar Beams anymore. After that, Torkoal goes for Yawn, and I decide to Encore it into Yawn so that it can't do any damage to me as I switch out into Tyranitar. This of course means that Tyranitar is going to get yawned on the switch, and I do have the leftovers, so I am going to get put to sleep after I go for Substitute, but since I have the Power Split, this Torkoal really can't touch me with anything. And more importantly, it's still encored, so it can't even do any damage to my Substitute as I just burn off the sleep turns. However, the second turn, I actually managed to wake up as early as possible and go for a Dragon Dance. And even though I've done everything in my power to make it so that this Torkoal can't hurt me, Body Press is 4 times super effective, and Torkoal is pretty heavy, so it manages to at least break my Substitute. Then as I take out Torkoal, Sandstream actually ends, so I know that Flygon is very likely to set up the weather, so I can go for a Substitute and go for another Dragon Dance afterwards. This was in a way kind of unnecessary, since if I would have just gone for the Dragon Dance as this Flygon set up the sand, I would have been in the same position and taken less damage because of the Substitute. Either way, I take out the Flygon, and next up is Gudra, so I actually do the exact same thing, expecting it to go for Rain Dance. I set up my Substitute. And once again, this doesn't really make any sense, since I would have just been able to take it out the turn after I go for a Dragon Dance as it Rain Dances, but I guess I just felt like doing it this way. It seemed right at the time. But after Gudra destroys our Substitute with a Rain Boosted Surf, we can take it out with a Stab Crunch, and next up is Turtonator. And here comes the Sun, so I set up another Substitute, and this time it actually makes sense because Turtonator just tries to go for Shell Trap all the time, so I can set up to +6 with Dragon Dance. And I mean, the AI is seriously pretty dumb here. I'm sitting hot behind a Substitute, Dragon Dancing my way up, and it's not even trying to touch me, and once I'm strong enough, I just decide to go for an Earthquake and take it out. It's when AI does this I question Terminator.
You do realize I'm the great Raihan, right? I'll be the one to be...
Yeah, save your speech for later. That makes us Galar's top model, and now we have to go up against Evil Rose, who's trying to destroy the world with Dynamax Pokemon.
And I will say, this man dresses fashionably, but not quite as fashionably as Miss Galar himself.
So I start out the battle with Colossal with its base 30 speed, but I can outspeed Escavalier at base 20 and take it out with a Heat Crash. I then go ahead and burn the Ferrothorn to nerf it a little bit and take some pitiful damage from a Body Press. At this point, it's time to send in Rolling Stone as Ferrothorn goes for a Curse, and you know what they say, if you start him up, he'll never stop. So that's exactly what I do, because today I have every intention of making a grown man cry. And so it starts. I decimate all of Rose's team and show him that I am the more fashionable model. Because you know what, Rose? I can't get no satisfaction until you're defeated. Anyway, after taking him down, we have to help the magical doggos take down the spaceship thing, which we actually managed to do with relative ease, and the last blow actually goes to Hoppin' as double, so good job, I guess. But here's the thing, before we fight Leon, I still have another mission that I need to go through with. It wasn't enough to beat Rose, I have to beat his brother Peony as well. And the thing about him is he has 2 level 70 Pokemon, and he heavy slams my Sudowoodo down to Sturdy, and I did give it a Citrus Berry just so that I don't go down to the Hail, and I can hit Caparaja with a super effective Hammer Arm to do a little bit of damage at least. I then pivot out into Motorhead, who I know can take a heavy slam just so that I can bait that high horsepower and switch in my Crustle for free. After that, I can double my defense with Iron Defense so that I can take a heavy slam from this thing, and since I'm faster, I can actually end up taking out the level 70 Caparaja with a Body Press. But the Caparaja wasn't really the problem. His sturdy Aggron is the problem because it can take me out in one hit at this range. And I was about to sack Crustle here, but he misses his Stone Edge, so I can take him down to his sturdy with a Body Press. Because of this, I figure I should probably save Crustle, so I swap into the Beetles, who can easily tank a Stone Edge, but he actually misses his next one as well. And since Tyranitar is faster, I outspeed and just go for an Earthquake and take it out, so that was pretty easy, even though Peony is like 10 levels higher than I am. But since we now have access to the Crown Tundra, I can capture myself a Tyrant that I named Black Sabbath, and it has an adamant nature. So after giving it one rare candy, it evolves into a Tyrantrum, and this means that I have the final team that I want to go into the champion fight with. And so it's time to take on the final challenge against Champion Leon. And I had to do a lot of preparation and strategizing for this battle, but in the end, I came up with some pretty fun stuff, and he leads off with his Aegislash, so I obviously start out with Led Zeppelin. The first turn, I get hit by a super powerful Flash Cannon, and I set up my Sticky Web, which is really all that Led Zeppelin is here to do in this battle, and I heal a little bit with my Enigma Berry that I found in the Crown Tundra. But even with that healing, a second Flash Cannon is gonna take out Led Zeppelin. Enjoy that stairway all the way up to heaven, cause you've been a saint, Chuckle. We can then bring in Black Sabbath and Revenge KO Aegislash with an Earthquake, with its defenses only being 50 when it's in its attack form. So that's one less thing to worry about, and Leon's next Pokemon is Haxorus, which gets caught in the Sticky Web, which means we're actually going to be able to outspeed with Tyrantrum. And because I'm Focus Sashed, I decide to go for a Dragon Dance just in case Dragapult comes out, in which case I'm going to be able to take it out with a Crunch. But this means that when we get hit by the Outrage, we obviously get taken down to our 1 HP Focus Sash, and the next turn we can retaliate and take this thing out with a Dragon Claw. However, Leon doesn't send in Dragapult next, he sends in Seismitoad, so I go ahead and swap out for Dire Straits. And to my surprise, Liquidation doesn't even take me down to my Sturdy ability, but the next turn, because of a Custap Berry, I end up going first, and I can take out Seismitoad with a Wood Hammer. But since we don't have Rock Head, the recoil damage takes me out, so that's going to be the end of the Walk of Life for Dire Straits. Knowing that Leon's going to send in Dragapult next, since it's in order, I decide to send out Assault Vest Tyranitar. That means that the highest damage move this thing can use against me is Dragon Breath, which does absolutely nothing, and I can retaliate with a Crunch, taking out Dragapult in one clean hit. This means that Leon only has Cinderace and his signature Charizard left, and first is Cinderace, which gets its speed dropped by Sticky Web, but it's still going to be faster than me, of course. It does end up missing its Pyro Ball, but the combination of Earthquake and Sandstorm doesn't quite take it out. It leaves it at like 1 HP, so Leon heals it up. The next Earthquake is a bit of a higher roll, so the combination of it and Sandstorm actually ends up taking out the Cinderace, and now all we have to deal with is the G-Max Charizard. And the Beetles is almost at full health, so it all comes down to if we can survive a Max Overgrowth and retaliate with a Rock Slide. Worst case scenario, we can always sacrifice a few Pokemon, bring out Queen, and go for Excel Rock to win this fight, but because of my Assault Vest, I end up taking the Max Overgrowth super well, and I retaliate with a quad-effective Stab Rock Slide and beat this challenge. In fact, I would even argue that I rocked and rolled it. So what did I learn from this run? Well, that Tyranitar is super awesome, of course, but also that rock types are way more formidable and get way better moves than I would have ever expected. So definitely let me know if you like this run in the comments down below, and leave a like if you stayed all the way to the end. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? If anything, I think you should definitely subscribe just for the fact that my brother put in all this effort to do a cover of the Hall of Fame theme just for this video. So leave me your suggestions, and until we see each other next time, have a good one.